the weight of her gaze. The metal door slammed shut with a sound that echoed through Sarah's chest like a physical blow, and for the first time in her 8 years as a corrections officer, she felt the weight of those iron bars not as protection, but as a cage around her own heart. She stood in the stark fluorescent light of cell block D, clipboard trembling slightly in her hands, staring at the woman who had just been transferred from county holding, a woman whose dark eyes met hers with such raw, unguarded pain that Sarah forgot to breathe. The inmate's wrists bore the fresh marks of handcuffs. Her orange jumpsuit hung loose on her thin frame, and there was a bruise blooming purple across her left cheekbone, but none of that compared to the devastating vulnerability Sarah saw in her face. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in Sarah's carefully constructed world, and she knew with terrible certainty that her life would never be the same. Her name was Maya Rodriguez, and according to the file Sarah read later that night in the privacy of her small apartment, she was 29 years old, convicted of vehicular manslaughter after a car accident that killed a teenage boy. The details were sparse and clinical, but they told Sarah nothing about the woman she had seen, the woman whose hands had shaken as she accepted the standard-issue bedding, whose voice had cracked when she whispered a barely audible thank you, whose eyes had filled with tears she refused to let fall. Sarah had seen hundreds of inmates during her tenure at Riverside Correctional Facility, had learned to maintain professional distance, to see them as numbers and case files rather than human beings with stories that could break your heart. But Maya was different. Maya had looked at her like she was seeing not a uniform but a person, and Sarah had felt exposed in a way that terrified her. The days that followed were torture of the sweetest kind. Sarah found herself volunteering for shifts in cell block D, telling herself it was just to ensure the new transfer was settling in properly, that it was her duty to monitor potentially vulnerable inmates. But she knew she was lying to herself. She would walk past Maya's cell and feel her pulse quicken, would catch glimpses of her during recreation time and feel her breath catch in her throat. Maya was quiet, kept to herself, spent hours reading books from the prison library and writing in a journal that she guarded fiercely. She didn't cause trouble, didn't join any of the groups or cliques that formed in the yard, seemed to exist in her own world of grief and solitude, and Sarah watched her with an intensity that frightened her, memorizing the way Maya tucked her dark hair behind her ear when she read, the graceful way her fingers moved across the pages of her journal, the sad smile that sometimes touched her lips when she was lost in thought. It was 3 weeks before they had their first real conversation. Sarah was doing her evening rounds, checking cells before lights out, when she noticed Maya sitting on her bunk, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Every instinct Sarah had developed as an officer told her to keep walking, to maintain boundaries, to not get involved in the emotional lives of inmates. But something stronger than training pulled her to stop at the cell door. She asked quietly if Maya was okay, and the question seemed to shatter whatever dam Maya had built inside herself. The words poured out about the accident, about the boy who had died, about how she had been sober for 6 years before that night but had relapsed after her mother's death and made the worst decision of her life. She talked about the boy's parents at the trial, the hatred in their eyes, and how she deserved every second of her 15-year sentence because she had destroyed a family. She talked until her voice was hoarse and Sarah listened, standing on the other side of those bars, feeling tears stream down her own face because the pain in Maya's voice was so genuine, so devastating, that it carved itself into Sarah's soul. That night opened a floodgate that neither of them could close. Their conversations became the axis around which Sarah's entire existence revolved. She would linger at Maya's cell during rounds, and they would talk in hushed voices about everything and nothing, about Maya's childhood in East LA, about Sarah's painful journey of coming out to her conservative family, about books and music and dreams they had both abandoned. Maya had wanted to be a teacher before the addiction took hold, and Sarah heard the longing in her voice when she spoke about the classroom she would never have. Sarah confessed that she had wanted to be a social worker but had chosen corrections because it felt safer, less emotionally demanding, though now she realized she had been running from the very connections that made life meaningful. They talked about loneliness and regret, about second chances and whether redemption was possible for those who had caused irreparable harm. And somewhere in those whispered conversations, In the space between the bars that separated them, something bloomed that was beautiful and impossible and absolutely forbidden. Sarah knew she was falling in love, and the knowledge was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had dated women before, had even had a serious relationship that ended badly 3 years ago, but nothing had prepared her for the intensity of what she felt for Maya. It was more than physical attraction. Though Sarah couldn't deny the way her body responded to Maya's presence, the way she imagined what it would feel like to touch her, without barriers between them. It was the way Maya's mind worked, the intelligence and compassion that shone through despite her circumstances, the way she took responsibility for her actions without making excuses, the way she spoke about wanting to find purpose even within these walls. Maya had started a book club among the inmates, was helping several women study for their GED exams, and Sarah watched her transform from the broken woman who had arrived months ago into someone who was fighting to rebuild herself from the inside out. The turning point came on a cold December evening when Sarah found Maya in the library, tears streaming down her face as she read a letter the boy's mother had written to her, a letter full of rage and grief, but also a single line that said she was trying to forgive, that she didn't want to carry hatred for the rest of her life. Maya looked up at Sarah with such hope and anguish mixed together that Sarah did something she had never done before. She checked to make sure they were alone, and then she reached through the spaces in the gate that separated the library from the hallway and took Maya's hand. The touch was electric, sending shockwaves through Sarah's entire body, and Maya gasped as if she had been burned. They stayed like that for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, their fingers intertwined, both of them trembling with the magnitude of what they were acknowledging. Sarah whispered that she was falling for her, and Maya whispered back that she had been in love with Sarah for months, and they both knew they were standing on the edge of an abyss that could destroy them both. What followed were months of stolen moments that felt like both heaven and hell. Sarah would find excuses to be near Maya, would brush against her hand when passing her meal tray, would let their fingers touch when exchanging books. They communicated through glances across the yard, through notes hidden in library books, through the language of longing that transcended words. Sarah knew she was violating every ethical boundary of her profession, knew she could lose her job and face criminal charges for fraternization with an inmate. But she couldn't stop. Maya had become her oxygen, and the hours they weren't together felt like suffocation. They talked about the future and impossibilities, about what it would be like when Maya was finally released, about whether what they felt could survive in the real world, about whether Sarah would wait 13 more years for a woman she could never truly have. The uncertainty was agony, but it was an agony Sarah chose every single day because the alternative, life without Maya in it, was unthinkable. The crisis came when Officer Martinez, Sarah's colleague and friend, pulled her aside one afternoon with concern etched across his face. He told her that people were talking, that her favoritism toward inmate Rodriguez was becoming obvious, that she needed to request a transfer to a different block before someone reported her. His words were kind but firm, and Sarah knew he was right. She was endangering her career, her reputation, everything she had worked for. But more than that, she was endangering Maya, who could face punishment, or transfer to a different facility if their relationship was discovered. That night, Sarah lay in her bed and sobbed until she had no tears left, knowing what she had to do but feeling like the decision was tearing her apart from the inside. She requested the transfer the next morning, citing personal reasons, and her supervisor approved it immediately. Sarah had 2 weeks before she would move to cell block A, 2 weeks to figure out how to say goodbye to the woman who had become her entire world. She told Maya during their next conversation, and the devastation on Maya's face mirrored the agony in Sarah's heart. Maya begged her to stay, said they could be more careful, promised she would never let anything happen to jeopardize Sarah's career. But Sarah knew it was impossible. The risk was too great, and more than that, Sarah realized she couldn't give Maya what she needed. She couldn't be there for her the way she deserved, couldn't build a real relationship through bars and stolen glances, couldn't love her the way she wanted to in a system that made their connection illegal. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe in the power of love that transcends boundaries, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter, stories about real human connection and the courage it takes to love against all odds. Their final conversation happened 3 days before Sarah's transfer. In the library during a rare moment when they were completely alone. Sarah had spent days trying to find the right words, but when she looked into Maya's eyes, everything she had planned to say evaporated. Instead, she told Maya the truth, that loving her had changed everything, that Maya had shown her what it meant to truly see another person, to connect with someone at a soul-deep level. She told Maya that she would wait, that 13 years felt like nothing compared to the possibility of building a real life together, that she would be there the day Maya walked out of those gates. She promised to write, to visit during designated hours, to be whatever Maya needed her to be, even if it was just a friend on the outside who believed in her capacity for change and redemption. Maya listened with tears streaming down her face, and when Sarah finished speaking, she said something that would stay with Sarah forever. She said that Sarah had given her the greatest gift anyone could give, the gift of being seen as fully human, as more than her worst mistake, as someone worthy of love despite the terrible things she had done. She said that their love, however impossible, had saved her life in a very real way, had given her a reason to work on herself, to believe in the possibility of becoming someone better. She said she would wait too, would count down the days until she could walk free and find Sarah, would carry their love as a light through the darkness of her sentence. Please, if this story moved you, take a moment to comment below with a heart emoji. Let us know that you believe love can exist in the most unexpected places, that redemption is possible, and that human connection has the power to transform us. Sarah worked her final shift in cell block D with tears blurring her vision, knowing that this was both an ending and a beginning. She walked past Maya's cell one last time and their eyes met through the bars. No words were exchanged, but everything that mattered passed between them in that look: love, promise, hope, and the unshakable belief that what they had found was worth fighting for. Sarah drove home that night with her heart simultaneously broken and full, knowing that she had 13 years to become the woman Maya deserved. 13 years to build a life that would be waiting when Maya finally walked free. The road ahead was long and uncertain, filled with obstacles that seemed insurmountable, but Sarah had learned something invaluable from loving Maya, that true love doesn't ask for easy. It asks for real, and real is always worth the wait.